All right, we are live here with Untamed Motors. I'm the car guy online. We are going to be discussing the car market crash of 2025, or whether or not we actually think it will crash, and kind of what a crash looks like. And it's probably going to spiral off into Toyota conversations and all sorts of other things. So, yeah, I think I would like to start out, and maybe you can kind of guide this by, there's been a lot of folks out there that say, oh, the car market hasn't crashed. YouTubers are saying it's going to crash. Financialists say it's going to crash. What do you think that looks like for 2025? Like, what does a real crash or correction look like?
Yeah, no, for starters, Jeremy, thanks for allowing me to join you today. Of course, I know we chat a little bit here and there, but this is our first time doing this, so I really appreciate you allowing me to join you today. Yeah, and I think that's a big point of contention for a lot of folks, right? When they see the word crash, what do they automatically think of? They think of, hey, it's going to be a 60% or 70% off, right? It's going to be a flash or fire sale, right? But that's not what reality has in store for us, right? I think the most realistic, in my personal opinion, a realistic quote unquote crash that we would see later this year, perhaps, would be that 10 to 15% below invoice across the whole dealership lot, right? I mean, that being them really pushing their vehicles. But I think that 10 to 15% off below invoice isn't really what people envision or what they really desire. And that's kind of where that rub comes for a lot of people. I don't know. What do you think? What is it that you see happening?
Yeah, I feel the same way. It depends on the brand too. We just bought I drive an old 2008 Sequoia, but my wife has now a new Volkswagen, which I never thought I'd buy. But it was like what you said, it was one of the only brands. We drove all these brands and I found, wow, Volkswagen was, 10 or 15% below invoice. And, I could buy a new car with a 100,000-mile warranty, or I could buy this used 4Runner with 50,000 miles for the same price.
Yeah.
And so we kind of made the decision like, yeah, we'll go with that. But I do think that's like an outlier, and a lot of people don't want Volkswagen, they don't want a German car. So I think I would agree that I think all these manufacturers are lagging behind a little bit, but we're going to see that same idea of you're going to get the good financing and you're going to get the money off. Right now, you see GM and Toyota and everybody where they're like, yeah, you can get great financing. We're not going to give you a good deal on the car, or you can take the cash, but not the financing. So when do you think it'll get there, in 2025? Do you think it's going to have a lag, like they're going to wait for tax season to play out? Or
I would say so. I mean, that's not uncommon year to year, that. Yeah. But I think now more than ever, we see a lot of dealerships really kind of holding firm. We talked about it before briefly, but the stalemate that we're kind of starting to see, right? A lot of dealerships are really trying to firm up on their discounts, like, hey, this is the deal, take it or leave it. In my personal opinion, it's going to serve to their detriment, right? Because I don't think they're going to have that luxury. Come May, June, July timeframe, when quote unquote tax season's over with, they're not going to have the luxury of trying just to move that inventory more, and them holding out. Well, the buyers are just not there. That supply has far exceeded demand, and that's abundantly clear when you look at the numbers right now.
Yeah, driving the lots today. It depends on the brand. Toyota is traditionally always, I feel like they've been kind of holding back inventory a little bit. But then you see General Motors, Ford, Kia, they're just 5 acres full, and they're selling vehicles. But how many do you think are fleet? Or, lease is up a lot. So
yeah, I think, the fleet versus retail is always kind of a misleading number often reported by manufacturers, right? I think it is directly in line with how manufacturers often report their sales. Yeah, I think we talked about it briefly too, with Ford often bragging about the number of vehicles they've delivered, quote unquote delivered. They use that word all the time. That doesn't mean they sold them. What does that mean? That means they dropped them off to their Ford dealerships, and now they're collecting dust on their Ford dealerships, but they still hype it up and beat their chest with those kind of figures. So I kind of find that misleading and pretty upsetting, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and people, they tend to shop so much more because of the price of vehicles by monthly payments and lease. It's like that's all they care about. They don't want to own anything. Own nothing and be happy life.
It's a shame. Yeah. No, for sure. I guess, I mean, on that note, what are some examples of once very desirable vehicles that went for markups and huge premiums that are now going for discounts, sub MSRP? What are some of the prime examples that you've noticed?
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about, look at the Raptors, look at your buddy just bought that ZR2
Yeah.
Bison. Yeah, so maybe you want to tell that story about how, maybe a year ago that was 10 grand over MSRP and now it's not.
Yep. No, there's one of my buddies, I just helped him out. He was buying a Chevy Colorado ZR2 Bison. So if you're unfamiliar, you get the Chevy Colorado, and ZR2 is a trim of it, more off-road version of it, of course. Then the Bison kind of adds some additional features, steel bumpers, some additional stitching, some additional flair. The MSRP on his was, I believe, 62 or 63,000, I believe, right around there. Ended up being collectively about $5,000 off is what he ended up getting for it. Which, he felt really good about it. And I don't know if I believe it. We did ask to see the invoice from the dealership, and he claimed it to be 58,200. I'm not sure if I actually believe that, but he sent me over a sheet, and he highlighted it. This is invoice, blah, blah, blah. But I know the profit margin does kind of shrink a little bit when you start getting those higher trim vehicles that have like the Bison package, which are AEV additions to it. But he got $5,000 off. Last year, 2 years ago, I think we both can agree. I mean, a lot of those were going for 5,000 over, right? 5,000, 10,000 over pretty regularly. So, I mean, that's a prime example there. Although he feels really good about it. When you compare that to like the Silverado or F-150s, those are coming with, $10,000 off regularly. That's a pretty common discount. So when you compare that to that, it's hard to get wildly excited about it. But that profit margin may be just smaller. Yeah,
it might be. And it's not. It's funny because I think folks think that the profit margins are bigger. Like, there's a much bigger gap between MSRP and what they actually build it for. I actually think there is less of a gap because of all the UAW, contracts and the cost of labor's gone up, and it's just like things haven't stabilized with the wages of the consumer, the wages of the people that build the vehicles, and then now the threat of tariffs.
Yeah. I mean, that's a natural progression for that topic. Obviously, a little bit more of a controversial one, and not to get into politics per se in our chat here, but like, what do you honestly foresee being the impact of tariffs on vehicle sale prices?
Oh, man, I have no idea what's going to happen. When I look at the sticker on a car, it's usually like 33% Mexico, but a ton of the chips and the electronics come from China. And so that's another 10%. When you look at manufacturer profits, I think you saw GM come out with, and Toyota came out with statements saying they didn't think in the short term it would affect sales or the cost of vehicles short term. Toyota's set up a little better than everyone else. They have so many manufacturing, in the US, and so many little hubs in the US, and then a lot of stuff comes from Japan. I think they're going to be fine, other than maybe the Tacoma, anything that's coming from that Mexico plant. But the Tundra's in the US, the Alabama plant produces the Tundra engine. So yeah, it's tough to say. I think it's going to be dependent on the manufacturer, how much is coming from Mexico and China and Canada. And how nimble they are, like Toyota's kind of nimble just because they're so global. But the other manufacturers like GM and Ford, and they might struggle a little bit more. Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and I don't think this is necessarily a popular based on a lot of comments I've gotten in my videos, but I do believe like it would be company suicide for them to stack on a 25% at this point in time. If they were to hike up the price tag of that Tacoma tomorrow, 25% more than what they already have it at, I mean, it would kill that Toyota Tacoma nameplate, in my opinion, right? I mean, they already kind of have neutered it to some degree. Yeah. Controversial there a little bit, but and we already see them discounting $6,000 to $8,000 off of mini trims outside of the TRD Pro and Trail Hunter, of course. So they don't have that luxury to just hype it up 25% more than what they already did. I think the realistic thing that they would do is try to spread out that additional
tariff amounts across all of their vehicles, right? So just hike them up just a little bit, all of them. So we ultimately will eat it, but they just can't force it onto one vehicle because that one particular vehicle is more so built out of country.
Yeah. Well, it's tough with the parts too. I think that's the bigger thing because they could manufacture them here.
Yeah.
And that would actually probably raise costs more than just the tariffs alone, if they come into American wages.
Yeah.
But yeah, you wonder what'll happen, more long term than anything. But maybe it will bring some manufacturing back. I mean, that's the end goal, is to try to not just be a service-based country. And right now, I don't want higher prices in anything, including cars, but at the same time, I think it's a pain the country is going to have to go through to reset and not just be like a consumer country. And our only leverage right now against China and anyone else is our consumption. And once we lose that, or if we lose our consumption leverage, do you really think they're going to play nice with us? No. So I understand that tariff idea and trying to kind of swing the pendulum back to get some jobs back here and some manufacturing back here, but who knows if it'll work out the way they want.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is fascinating to me, and it frustrates me to know how much Toyota saves by outsourcing production of some vehicles to cheaper labor countries, especially having shifted that Tacoma entirely to Mexico. Like you just would have thought that maybe they would have kept that price tag right about the same, right, as the third generation Tacoma. But for them to have hiked it up as much as they did after saving over 80% when it comes to labor costs. I mean, the average wage hourly is $16 to $18 per hour down in San Antonio, Texas, right, for employees, American employees, where they pay on average about $2.70 per hour to Mexican employees down in Mexico. So about over 80% savings, but we didn't see any of it. So that's a part of the rub for me,
Yeah. I see a lot of folks in the comments too. They say, well, it's, Mexican made, and that's why it doesn't, why we're having problems. And actually they're relating it to the Tundra. It's like, well, actually, no, the Tundra is American made. It's probably more of an engineering problem or some other process problem or a machine problem. But
I mean, there's no denying that there's state-of-the-art facilities down in Mexico, right? I think it's, to be fair, we need to make that clear. But still, the individuals producing the product, and it makes me wonder if they're getting paid that much. Do they take tremendous pride in doing it, right? Where comparatively to getting paid a higher wage, of course.
Yeah. How do you think that? So I've heard the argument from other YouTubers that say, the inflation is not that bad on vehicles. You've seen the argument of taking the CPI index and saying, well, a car 10 years ago only costs 5,000 or 10,000 more today. And that's, right in line with inflation or actually below. What do you think the other factors are with, beyond just the price of the vehicle that upset people so much with these prices?
No, I mean, the obvious response to that is just the collective, right? The collective cost of everything, right? Everything has gotten grossly expensive. The cost of living, cost of grocery, cost of mortgage, blah, blah, blah. But insurance, I think, really has been the silent killer for so many people. Your annual insurance premiums have skyrocketed, and they, no kidding, have doubled across the country in the last 2.5, 3 years at this point. So that kind of sneaks up on people when you combine that with we mentioned it plenty of times on my channel, but the national average monthly payment on a new vehicle is just over $760 per month. And when you combine that with that insurance premium that has over doubled, it sneaks up on people, and that becomes just overbearing, right? So I think it's just the collective of everything hitting at once. It has really been burdensome for Americans.
Yeah. It'll be telling probably after tax season, during the summer months, I think that'll be the true test of when you look at, actually, I had something up here that I was going to show, see if I can present it here without sharing my entire screen. Yeah, I don't know if that works. Okay. So did you see the outstanding credit card balances recently?
No, I have not seen this.
Yeah, this is you're looking at 2008 kind of, it's just really similar to what happened in 2008. You see that spike way up in credit card balances. And then, as we recovered from that great financial crisis, it, dumps back down. But you see it kind of drop in COVID where everybody just hunkered down and saved, and then it just shoots to the moon recently. Yeah, 1.2 trillion in credit card debt.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, you can tell. Yeah, right after COVID, people went full YOLO, right?
Yeah.
And it clearly shows right there. I mean, the last report that I have seen, and correct me if you've seen something different, but that national average per person of credit card debt was just over $7,200. So
Yeah.
Imagine that. The average American out there walking around burdened with $7,200 of credit card debt. And that's the average. Obviously, a lot of people more, a lot of people less, but that's kind of, I don't know, kind of wild to hear that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's no surprise that people are drowning right now. And well, that kind of compounds to the issue of the car market at large, right? That's why we are seeing that exponential growth of inventory levels. Not to say people aren't buying, of course they are. They're going to continue to buy, but that production is clearly outpacing that demand. And that ultimately leads to, like what we talked about before, what are those ripple effects? You tell me, Jeremy, what happens next as we begin to fill up these lots? What comes next?
There's all sorts of weird things that happen with this. One is this, I was telling you about this earlier, where you look at this, the 2001 Toyota Tundra, people are starting to buy up these old vehicles because they don't trust the new vehicles. Number one, that's the biggest reason. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like this in history where you have people buying 20 to 25-year-old vehicles, that would normally be considered done. They're like a liability, but the cost of new vehicles and the cost to repair new vehicles is so high that they're willing to take a chance on a vehicle with 2, 3, 400,000 miles on it just because people say these are great vehicles. They're reliable if you take care of them. I think do you have a 4.7 now in your Lexus?
Yeah, so yeah, touchy subject, Jeremy, because I have just recently sold it.
Oh no! Oh no!
Sticking true to my Untamed roots here, we did sell it. I haven't announced it on the channel. I sold it 2 weeks ago, actually. So I've been getting shipped and dropped off to school every day. It feels like by my wife.
Oh man!
Before she drops our kids off to school, because I'm waiting for a vehicle to be transported from South Carolina. The same guy I bought my last Tundra TRD Pro from. I'm buying another vehicle from him, and they're transporting it now. So I gotta wait.
Nice.
But yeah, to answer your question, I did have a 4.7, and there's another V8 in the vehicle that I'm buying.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you look at the 2021 Tundra, year over year, it's only down, 4.29%. And then you look at all the newer ones, and people are, in general, they're afraid, 17%, 19%, 15% down. That's wild. And we had talked, before this call, the 2017 Tundra I purchased new for $36,000. And right now I just looked for almost the same truck online with 100,000 miles is still 30 grand. I think that's
not insane.
And this is the used market. So
no, I mean, I think a large part of it is what can you do with those older vehicles? What can you do with that 2017 that you can't do with this new one? You can pop the hood and confidently work on the thing. Even like average Joes like you and I, we can pop the hood, do some homework, and maybe figure it out, right? Whereas you lose that confidence when they cram so much tech into these vehicles and hybridize everything.
Yep. Yeah, you've owned two new Toyotas. What was your overall thought on, I see this a lot, people upset about, I think they're upset about the cost of the vehicle, but then they scrutinize the quality a little more. So what do you think about the interior quality on those new Toyotas?
I think, for starters, I think to be fair, I can understand people really liking them if they have not been a Toyota enthusiast. If they're new to the brand, or if they came from, different, if they have not owned a previous generation Tundra, they would probably fire up that new generation, the current generation Tundra, and drive it and be wildly excited about it, because they don't really have a good baseline when it comes to what, in my opinion, a true Toyota offers, and that is reliability, simplicity, and affordability. Because these new ones, I mean, they're priced to the moon. I bought that 2023 Tundra TRD Pro. I wanted to give it a college try. I didn't go into buying it to try to beat up on it. I bought the dang thing. I spent a ton of money on it, right? I'm not trying to do that. But it's also in our nature, human nature, to defend our purchase, right? We all do it. We're all guilty of it. I do it. We all do it. But some people just refuse to accept the fact that they didn't get the greatest truck, but they hype it up as if they did. The quality of it, I don't know. It was a lot of plastic in there, which would be okay. It kind of goes in line with the simplicity thing of Toyota, what it should be, I think, but not when you combine it with the astronomical price tag. It goes out the window, that value, in my opinion. So it's very plasticky on the inside. The turn radius bothered me a lot more than what it probably should have, if I'm being honest. But I
hear that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like, that was one thing I didn't realize how much I truly loved about my 2021 Tundra TRD Pro, my previous gen, before getting this new one. It felt like driving a dump truck by comparison. It truly did. So that bothered me. And the final thing really is just the synthetic feel to it. And the best way I could put it, honestly, is it feels like that Tundra, the new one, lost its identity. It kind of lost what made it special. And that was that raw, visceral feeling driving experience. So just synthetic.
Yeah, they're powerful. They're, I get the whole turbocharged, hybrid, electric, all these things are super torquey, powerful, but like you said, the cost of repairs is it's through the roof.
Yeah. And how do you feel about this big push, not just with Toyota, obviously we can poke at Toyota plenty, but how do you feel about the push to the hybridization of so many things? Hybridization, EVs in general, perhaps, and just the smaller displacement motors being forced into everything with turbos on it. What's your stance?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to stop. I think a lot of folks thought it was going to, like Trump got elected and everything is going to get dismantled and we're going to see V8s tomorrow. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's just going to continue down that path. They're planning for 5-8 years down the road, and so I think we're just going to see more of it. Actually, I did a video on this. I really do think that the biggest reason why most manufacturers are getting rid of their big V8s, you see it in the Tundra sales. They sell a ton of them now, a lot more than they did even the 2021s. And a big part of that is you see TFL or someone doing an Ike gauntlet test, and it's really difficult to make some naturally aspirated thing keep up with, a V8 or a turbocharged engine. Like a twin turbo on the Ike Gauntlet in the F-150 is just going to destroy everything when it first came out. And you see that, and they're like, well, this is the king. This is the new king of the towing hill. And then you see people racing these trucks all the time, and it's like, that's not what I use a truck for, but it is important to people. And if they're going to spend that much money, they want 500 foot-pounds of torque. And so, yeah, I think that's the direction. It's just going to continue to go that direction.
No, and I don't think we should fault people for that either. Right. I understand, and people do get wrapped around the axle about reading the brochure, reading the stats on the vehicles, and it's easy to get into, for lack of better terms, pissing contests with your vehicles, with your trucks, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like for you, and for myself, and I know a lot of people, there's a lot more to the vehicle than just the stats, right? I mean, how does it make you feel? What does that sound it makes when you're on throttle? What's the drama like? And that's what I truly miss of the 5.7 liter V8, although the new one will outperform it. There's no denying it.
Yeah. So. Well, yeah, the simplicity of the old platforms, my old Sequoia, when I get it in the winter, it's, it's cloth seats. It's like people ripped on the dash and the design of that old Sequoia and Tundra, and they said it was just terrible. But the simple things like putting on a big pair of gloves, like, a full-size pair of gloves and getting in the truck, I can just turn the knobs and there's no like small buttons to do the heat or whatever. It's like that. The Canadian guys probably love that, not having to, if they're getting in and out of the truck in cold weather all the time. It's like, it's kind of irritating to have these touch screens and all this stuff. It's not really functional in some, it probably is in lower, the lower half, but yeah, you get up north, like where we're at in north, it's kind of irritating.
Yeah, no. And I personally believe that there is value, of course, with us leaning forward with diversifying the vehicle options. And I think a lot of my videos, it's easy to misconstrue what I say as being, I'm a die-hard, there's no replacement for displacement. Although that's what I like the most. I do find value in having a diversified option set, which is why I am especially frustrated with Toyota for not offering an option for the older, naturally aspirated platforms. Why didn't they? I mean, so many vehicle manufacturers will offer two engine options, just to give people the choice, right? But they totally went cold turkey on it, which I think personally is a bad move for them to have made.
Yeah. It used to be their secret sauce. That was how Toyota gained that legendary reliability. It was build one platform, put it in 10 different things, and it's going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't see a failure. It was by the third year something was out, it was going to last 300,000. Almost every one of them was going to be good if you maintained it.
Yeah.
And so I understand their thought process behind the one powertrain. This is what we're going to do. But yeah, it's if that's not reliable, then now you're in trouble. Yeah.
I just wish it wasn't such an about face, right? Like it wasn't such an abrupt change from what they have. But I think a lot of it can be contributed to, the change of leadership, right? We know that they had a change of CEO April 1st of 2023 from Toyota, Akio Toyota to Mr. Sato, right? Obviously a change of vision and approach to things, and that was abundantly clear as we look at these new vehicles. Yeah. I think we could beat that horse to death for a couple hours. We'll peel off.
Yeah. It's I still drive by the Toyota dealers. Just I don't know what I'm looking for. Sometimes I'm just driving by hoping to get inspiration or something. I have this old thing that I'm like you. I used to trade cars. It was like 6 months. I would last about 6 months, and I was out of the car. It was terrible for finances, but I loved it. And now I've owned this car for 7 years. This Sequoia, and I cycle through other ones, but I haven't gotten rid of that one, and it has grown on me a lot. It's one of those, like you said, the little dumb things like the turning radius, and just they're kind of like this endearing old thing that doesn't do as much as other cars do. You have to add CarPlay to it. You have to add anything. There's no electronics in them, but for some reason, just getting in and turning the keys, like I love this thing. I don't have to wonder if it's ever going to break down. So
it's a liberating feeling, right? I mean, I felt that way with the GX470 I just had, and I'll just tell you what, I'm replacing it with another GX, but a newer one. But that one had 192,000 miles on it, and that, I don't know, I never doubted it for a second. Even with 192,000 miles, that 4.7 liter V8, I was always going to turn the key, and it was always going to work just fine. So
yeah. Jimmy asks, what happens to vehicles at the dealer that when they can't sell them? You want to take a stab at that first?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step anyway is if they start getting too many vehicles, they have the right to actually start to turn away their allocations. They can turn away deliveries, and we have seen that throughout this last year and a half. So they'll begin to turn away their allocations because they have no longer the space for it, for starters. And it doesn't do them any good to put 10 of the same vehicle in line on their dealership to try to sell it. But eventually, the Ford in general, well, step one, pretend like you always see dealerships underneath the same umbrella. Like I have Ken Garff Ford, Ken Garff Toyota, right? They have many Toyota dealerships. They have many Ford dealerships. What they can try to do is pull some of that inventory and then send it to a different lot underneath their umbrella. So that's kind of like that step one, right? And if they're unsuccessful at trying a different location to sell a vehicle, maybe an EV would sell better in Colorado as it compared to Wyoming, right? It's a little bit more dispersed up here. It doesn't make as much sense, so they can move them down there. But if it doesn't sell then, it continues to sit on the lot for a couple of years. Ford then has the luxury of actually pulling vehicles and putting them on other Ford dealerships that are actually performing well. So that's kind of like what would happen before potentially a dealership would consider going belly up, really. I think that's perhaps the most clear precursor.
Yeah, the EVs, send them down here to Boulder. For those of you who don't know, I'm like what, an hour and a half south of you. You're in Wyoming. I'm in Colorado, but yeah, it's totally different worlds.
Yeah, very different politics.
Yeah,
Not so much between Jeremy and I, but generally.
It's rough. Well, we're in Weld County in Colorado, so it's like this there's a pocket of red here, and then there's the western slope is kind of, it's different style rural living, and then you get the eastern part of Colorado, and it's all much more like kind of like California-ish in Denver area, and then it's just it's a whole runs the gamut. So
yeah,
politics are the probably the last thing we should ever talk about, because you'll just never make everybody happy.
lose.
Yeah.
But I guess it goes without saying, but if there are any questions, feel free to throw them in. I know Jeremy's kind of keeping an eye on what's coming in, if at anything at all.
Yeah, I have the worst. You look good. So when you're talking, you look like you're looking at me, but my monitor's so big, I have this camera above it. So every time I'm looking at your face on my screen, it looks like I'm just not looking at you at all. It looks it's not a great setup, but it works. Yeah, the repo market surging, you see all that stuff going on in the headlines. Gosh, you look at every indicator, in my opinion, is there it's kind of ripe for a crash. But I still look at this one metric, and it's always been the stock market. And it's just, if it's in a bull run, the car market generally just stays. It stays where it is. It doesn't really crash like we want it to. And I think that's probably the key indicator for me with the car market on the whole, is just watch the stock market. If you start to see it turn down like it did in 2008, if you start to see companies, with layoffs and the sentiment is bad, and you start hearing about things like you talked about on your channel, like, are they going to bail these manufacturers out again? Are they going to, that will send, I think that will send people into rage if they talk bailouts again.
Yeah. No.
Too big to fail.
Yeah. But based on how some of these dealerships are responding right now and being rather firm, offering up that stalemate on their price tags,
yeah,
it does beg the question: are they confident they will get bailed out if push comes to shove? Right? I mean, kind of makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, when it comes to just repos in general, we talk about it plenty, but there was that 23% uptick throughout 2024 into 2025 here over the previous year. So that was definitely an unprecedented uptick, and how fast that compounding growth was. But I think the more alarming part is when you combine that with the fact that banks are declining loans and scrutinizing things so much more right now, and the inventory levels going up. I mean, the writing really is on the wall. We are seeing the highest level of 30-day, 60-day, 90-day delinquency rates, the highest that we've seen since the 08-09 recession.
Yeah.
I mean, let that sink in right there. I mean, if that's not the biggest indicator, what is?
Yeah.
People are failing to make payments.
Yeah. Did you see you probably saw the headline about Carvana maybe a month ago? It was considered the biggest father-son grift of the ages. It was $4 billion that the fathers sold out of that company. And I read through, there must have been 100 pages of that investigation. And the company that investigated them had investigated that Nikola EV dealer, or the EV maker, and done the same thing to them. They investigated them and said, hey, this company's not good. It's not going anywhere. And everybody said, whatever, they're just trying to pump and dump the stock so they can come in at a lower price. Well, the Nikola just went out of business, just announced bankruptcy last week. That same company investigated Carvana and talked to 49 different interviews, I think, with former Carvana directors. And boy, it was, going back to your point about the market and how it just feels like it's a stalemate, but it also feels artificially inflated to a certain point.
Yeah.
And the way Carvana is propping that up, and their whole strategy, it's always been to buy up as many cars as they can. Mm-hmm. And if you get to a certain threshold, like Carvana and CarMax, they get so many cars, they can actually manipulate the price. They can set the price a little higher because they own so much of the inventory.
Yeah,
So
they
now,
monopolize it. Yeah.
yeah, they're like there's like three black books. There's like AutoNation, um, Carvana, and CarMax, and then they own these auction houses. So, I mean, when you have these massive multi-billion dollar companies owning a third of the inventory,
Mhm.
it's very manipulative, and I think that's a big reason why used car prices haven't dropped more than they have. Because you go through lots and you see, I just went through lots today. Used cars are everywhere. They're just packing the lots, but the prices seem to be kind of just like the stalemate even in the used market.
Yeah. No, I think I'm gonna throw one thing out there just because you made me think of it. Sorry, as you were talking, but I personally love Toyota Land Cruiser Heritage Editions, the 200 series. I love that vehicle. I always gravitate back to, always look at it, and the very same can be said about that market in particular too, on a much smaller, more micro scale, right? You have this very niche vehicle. There is only 1,200 made per year, 2020 and 2021, and I'll say a couple companies within the US here, dealers, used dealers, buy them all up. They'll buy them all up, and they're always surfing the web and always hunting for them, and then they monopolize that market. So the much smaller scale, but more closer to home for me anyway, for the Heritage Edition and just Land Cruisers in general, they monopolize that market. It's super frustrating to see that. But yeah, same exact thing is happening
Yeah.
on a broader scale for sure.
Yeah, this person asked what's going to happen to Nissan, and you probably saw in the news how Honda kind of bailed on that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to speak prematurely on that because I personally haven't dug into that last iteration between Honda. Maybe you know more, Jeremy. A lot of people were maybe pontificating that Honda really just wanted Mitsubishi ultimately, but I'll let you respond to that.
I don't know any more than what the news is put out there in automotive news.
Yeah.
When you look at, they were working with Honda, it fell through, and then you saw Tesla was starting to be interested in Nissan a little bit. I would imagine somebody's going to save them. Somebody's going to come in and salvage something because they're just such a big presence, and it's not like, for me, man, maybe it could be biased because I owned Nissans in the past. When I was growing up, I was like twin turbo 300 ZXs. I had like 5 different Zs. I've had Titans and Frontiers, and my family, we've had Xteras, and it's just, they were so reliable, but they got such a bad name from that CVT.
Yeah.
And that was really what kind of killed them from that 2000 even 2008 to maybe 2020, was that just building CVT transmissions that didn't last more than like 120,000, 150,000 miles,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of ignoring that, so I think that's what hurt them. But they traditionally, man, they were one of my favorite companies. I love the Frontier. I think it's one of the last classic trucks. It's not perfect, but boy,
Yeah.
if you're going to buy a brand new truck and you wanted it to be a 10-year truck, that's probably one to get.
Yeah, I'd buy a Frontier any day of the week over the new Tacoma. So I totally agree with you. I think when it comes to Nissan Honda, though, I think there could have been extreme value for whatever it's worth had Honda done that. I think there's models within Nissan's lineup that were beneficial to the brand, but there was just a few too many that were just anchors for the brand, right? Yeah. And my love for Nissan came from, I bought a Nissan GTR track pack or track edition back in it was a 2024 that I bought. Yeah. So I'd sold my Subaru WRX STI, my dream car that I built up, and saved up a bunch of money throughout long story. I was able to work and actually save money, make money in college, thankfully. But I had my LT mobile, is what we jokingly call it, as a new lieutenant. I got stationed in Aviano, and I decided to make the plunge and try to go to Aviano with a Nissan GTR. Ended up being a huge mistake, for the record, because auto insurance for a young American living in Italy, rookie move. But it was still fun and amazing, and I still think often.
Oh man, the GTR, yeah, that's one of my all-time dream cars, but I have it on my desktop background right now.
Nice. It's an unreal vehicle. I love that thing, but cost a lot to drive it in Italy.
Oh yeah, I bet. This guy asks, So this is a funny question. The 19 to 2021 Tundras, they removed that transmission cooler.
Yeah.
It's so funny. My '08 Sequoia has the old cooler in it, and when I tow, up the Ike Gauntlet, up I-70 with a boat or something, I might see like 210 degrees on my transmission temperature. That's it. And I mean, just fully loaded car, towing a 6,000 pound load up that and just cranking it at like 5,000 RPMs with that big V8. And it just never, 210 is nothing.
Yeah, why did they get rid of it again? I knew they did. What was the real? Was it weight saving?
I think they said it just didn't need it. It was like, well, it doesn't need it.
To be fair, I haven't heard of it causing problems.
I haven't either.
You have. I mean, I have not.
No. I think it was one of those things that frustrated people because it felt like Toyota did the traditional Toyota thing where they overbuilt it originally in '08 because that was really the first year the Tundra came out, and the first gen Tundra was like, it was a between midsize and full size truck. It wasn't quite full size. And then when you looked at the '08 Tundra to 2021, it is a big vehicle. It's bigger than, I think, even the newer Tundra. When I sat in it, the old one feels a little bit wider and spacious inside.
Especially when you see them next to each other, right?
Yeah.
They look way bigger.
Yeah. So I think that was really they wanted to play in that American, like the farm game. They wanted to be in the rancher's mind. They wanted to just overbuild that thing. It was every commercial that came out was towing the space shuttle, towing. It was all like geared towards performance under load. And then I think they got to the point where they're like, yeah, maybe we overbuilt it a little bit, and it's probably fine without this cooler. And most manufacturers don't put large coolers in, and you see the new Tacoma in TFL videos hitting like 280, 290 on the transmission temperature towing. That's, to me, that's too hot. It's too much.
Hey, let's talk about I think, I'm not sure how many folks even have watched it. I've been looking, but I think you've been scrutinized for it a little bit. I have too, for sure. And I think I would even dare to say rightfully so. I mean, the whole, perhaps clickbaity car market crash videos, right? The thumbnail that's end of the world, the sky is falling. Why do you do that? Why do you do it? You go first, and I'll speak to it next.
Yeah, I think my more disaster clickbaity videos are more towards reliability of the vehicles. And even those, I'll get criticism from other YouTubers, and there's like, hey, all the vehicles aren't failing, like you say, or, they're not all having this problem. And I just like to say, I get that. I'm just trying to get a message out. You can say something super nicely on YouTube and you'll get 1,000 views. That's just the reality of how it is. But if you get their attention and you get them in and you tell the truth and you back it up with facts, I don't feel quite as bad as saying, GM's transmission disaster. That's my most recent video. I'm sure there's 100,000 people that don't have the problem yet, or maybe 200,000. But I know there's 5,000 that do, and I think that's 5,000 more than should have the problem in a brand new vehicle. So that's kind of how I justify it. And yeah.
No, I agree, and well said. I think one thing that's important for folks to know, and I think a lot of people who don't have their own YouTube channel are just unaware of it, is the click-through rate, right? So obviously you can have a clickbaity thumbnail all day long. If people click on it and just hate what you're saying, and they don't find any value in it, it wasn't educational for them, they can click dislike and then they'll move on. They're going to click away from the video. But if they actually click on your video and actually listen to the whole thing and at least seemingly enjoy it, if they watch the whole thing and like it, what does that mean? That only tells YouTube that, hey, this is a worthwhile video, and then it actually propels it right into the algorithm, if you will, and continues to push your video. So when people say, hey, you're doing it for clicks, that doesn't work if people clicked away from it. In fact, it's more detrimental to your channel if you did a clickbaity thumbnail and people didn't actually stick around. But if they stick around and find value in it, that's kind of how I justify it too. Obviously, there is always people are going to click on the doom and gloom no matter what. But if they can click on it and find value in it and enjoy the video, I take that still as a win.
Yeah. Yeah, there has to be some value to the person watching the video. And I think I always ask myself that question when I'm building a video. I'm like, okay, what value is there to the viewer? Because if I don't have some value, why am I doing it? It's like I like you said, you want to educate in some way, and usually that comes in the form of research. I know you do a lot of research on your videos. I know some days I'll spend a full day or two diving into data and looking at things and determining whether or not I should even bother talking about a topic. It's just, that's the nature of the game.
Yeah. Now my wife will often catch me on my phone at like 2 a.m. because a thought will come into my mind or an idea for a video to really dig into, and I'll start kind of researching it. But if I don't do it right then, I won't do it at all. So
right.
Not to mention I have like 35 kids, so during the day you got to be more tactful with our time. So
yeah, life with kids. You're in the. I'm surprised you can put out a video a week, because when my kids were that young, I was just
No, it's it's never a dull moment, as you know. We're chasing around with hockey and all that stuff right now. Which hockey I didn't realize is like a full year commitment, by the way, like at least 10 months. I didn't realize that when we got them into it, but they love it. So consequently, we love it too. One thing too that I'll throw out, because you mentioned I throw out videos every week, is I have learned, I'm not sure if you looked at your analytics, Jeremy, but a lot of people who actually watch my channel, they're generally, I'm talking only 10, 12% of the people viewing my videos are subscribers. And 90% are non-subscribers. So just people coming to the channel maybe for the first time. So I think my subscribers could potentially, and yours too, to some degree, would maybe be a little frustrated as you maybe get repetitious with some of your content. I do sometimes, admittedly. But I also keep that in mind that most of the people watching my videos they're new. They're watching it for the first time. So I kind of keep that in mind. And if there's a topic worth beating the drum on, I'm gonna do it just for the sake of spreading the word on it more.
Yeah, I think I have a different problem than you have. I get like 30 or 40% returning viewers. Okay. My problem comes from I'm not manufacturers and other YouTubers that are large don't like me and don't appreciate my message of. I think they get frustrated that the message is that no cars are reliable and what do you buy? Everything's junk type message, and that's not my message. I'm just trying to specifically point out the true problems with a lot of these new vehicles. And I started out looking at the new Tundra. That's when I started the channel. I was like going to buy a new Tundra, decided not to for obvious reasons. And then, away it went. So.
No, I admire that about you, and I admire that about your channel, that you're not afraid to, speak to the black eyes on these vehicles. And I think a lot of people are just afraid to do that, especially in the YouTube world, because if they start poking at a vehicle too much, well, suddenly their invites to those press events go away. Suddenly their invites and any kind of behind the scenes, whatever, from a manufacturer go away. So why bite the hand that feeds you? So I admire that about you. So
I do see that in the comments a lot, where I was on that live stream with Tim from Pickup Truck Talk, and then I see it in TFL's comments, and everybody says you're bought and paid for, all these things. And I do think I don't think they're paid directly from the manufacturers. I think that's a misconception. And so I will stick up for them there and say, I don't think they're not on some advertising budget but they get press vehicles, which is really a really nice perk. They get paid for hotels and flights, and that's not nothing.
I tell you what, I mean, I forget how long you've been following my channel, but I did have some invites from Toyota early on before I became critical of the new generations, of course. But I tell you what, they offer all expense paid trips to these 5-star resorts that are phenomenal, and they wine and dine you. So it's hard to speak poorly about their vehicles without feeling like you're going to lose that luxury. So I can't say I blame people, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. I don't really blame them. And I don't have payroll. I don't have cameramen. I can be more loose with my tongue, and I totally understand why TFL and they're businesses and they have payrolls to meet and benefits, and like it's a big. They can't just say whatever they want. They got to be careful.
We still have day jobs, right? So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy asks, does this 10-speed transmission issue affect the 2020 Silverado? It does. So it affects pretty much 2020 on, from what I see in the Facebook groups and the forums. I see folks even with 2024s that have had 3 valve bodies replaced and getting buybacks from GM. It just really depends on the situation. Some people say, oh, I haven't had a problem for 100,000 miles. But there are a lot of folks that have valve body issues in that transmission. So yeah, frustrating all around. I mean, you see Ford and GM collaborated on that 10-speed. Ford had problems initially that were completely different problems with it than GM. Now GM has problems, and everybody feels like I can't pick a vehicle that's reliable, you know?
I mean, just trucks in general from GM, I feel like with Silverados, they're going to go diesel, get the 3-liter diesel and the 1500, or get the 6.2-liter V8 that has been plagued with the lifter issues. So it is kind of like pick your poison to some degree. So I often feel for GM owners as of late.
Thank you, Wide Body Nation. We appreciate it. Appreciate the support.
Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah. Man, the V8, GM V8s. I really like the AT. You've seen the AT4X, like a Silverado or a Sierra AT4X. Either the Duramax or like the 6.2 would be awesome. You know, it'd be awesome if the transmission was trustworthy. but yeah, you've always got there's some poison to it. You know, it's like the transmission or the lifter issues, or, you know, it just feels, it feels like there's just no perfect, trustworthy vehicle anymore. But yeah, frustrating. But well, thanks for joining. I mean, I didn't know how this would go. It's always fun. This is my 3rd live stream and your first, so
yeah,
I don't know. I'm just gonna keep trying it and see how it goes, and talk to people. And I want to do one with TRD John, just because I think he's misunderstood too. I thought he was kind of a Toyota shill at first, and now after talking to him a little bit and seeing, I watch his content really closely. He is very, very critical of Toyota, and he's critical in as much as he can be, and while he can still get press vehicles, you know, but he'll tell the truth. He tells the truth about the consoles rattling, the quality of the interior. I mean, he's really been he's changed my mind about him, I guess, the perception about him.
No, he's a really good dude. Yeah, I've met him obviously a few times, been on a couple events with him. He really is a good dude. And he and Toyota Jeff, like you get what you see with him. Like, he is who he really is. Like, on his videos, that's how he is in real life. And both of them are really good guys. And well, TRD John, he's prior Air Force cat too. So
yep,
cut from the same cloth. So
yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah, thanks for your service too, and you and John. And I can't say that I served. My grandfather did, but I didn't. So
appreciate it. Thank you.
A lot of family members. So yeah. Well, thanks. And thanks for everybody that watched. And yeah, I'll slice this up into little bite-sized pieces over the next week.
Oh, thanks again for having me on, Jeremy. I appreciate it, bud.
Yep. Take care.
See ya.